So is that feeling better now, John?
Well, I should have done it longer. Let's see what happens.
Oh, very nice guy.
He's helping with that. Or he doesn't.
But I want to get this going for you. Yeah.
There you go, John.
It's going to be more of a bit.
You ready to start up again?
Yeah.
The thought of Renee entering the religious persuasion left me in awe. Not that she was incapable of becoming an outstanding nun, but a woman of her beauty and charm did not fit in my picture of someone resolved a monastic life. She was too full of life and independence.
He was what?
She was too full of life and independence of thought to be regulated to a strict discipline of monasticism. I was well aware that she possessed a great amount of selflessness as well-being and self-composed, and was bordered almost on self-denial. What would drive a person to such an extent that she give up all her earthly belongings and much more to lead a life of loneliness and self?
This is on, right? This is on, isn't it?
I'm going to take the top off. There you go.
Oh.
And the other thing is you might need to change your will.
Go ahead.
If there's some things that, are not going to...
Especially a person such as Renee, who had boundless and productive life ahead of her. I would be interesting as well as enlightening to see to what extent she would confide in me. There was not much going on at the hospital outside of the review of our individual cases, paperwork and training film, and a bit of calisthenics. Most of the time, we were free to go on a pass to a little after 1,200 hours each day. They strictly held to that policy. Most of the patients knew they would be returning to active duty shortly.
Who is this?
Huh?
Who would go active duty?
Most of the patients knew in the hospital they were returning to active duty shortly. So they were living it up in Paris and having much trouble getting into it. I do not have the motivation or inclination. As a consequence, I pretty well kept to myself. I suppose were some people I could feel comfortable with and go on a pass with them and walk around town, seize the sight, have something to eat, and finally return to the hospital. I much preferred to meet Renee each day and be in her company. For the next 2 weeks, I saw Renee each day. I got to know her fairly well. Most of the questions about her were answered or resolved in some fashion. I did not fully understand her innate desire for the life she chose, but I did perceive and grasp her motivation for doing so. I knew full well that I would never dispel her resolutionness. I would meet her at home occasionally, but most of the time we met at the metro station in Paris and would take off from there. We would ride the metro to Champ de Mars station and spend the afternoon at the Eiffel Tower, which we would climb the 1,069-foot tower to the top. The elevators were not working. So at the Eiffel Tower, the elevators don't work, huh?
Huh?
At the Eiffel Tower, the elevators don't work? The Eiffel Tower, the elevators weren't working?
No, not during the war, no.
Okay. Let's see. The whole panoramic of the sign below unfolded before us. It was an inspirational sight to behold. We also got a tremendous impression of Palais de Chalet, the complex. The sign had housed 4 museums, a theater, and a concert hall. I put my arm around her, and she would be embarrassed because of her lovely hair was blowing about in the wind on top of the tower. She would be constantly pushing away from her face, and I would steal a kiss to add in the frustration. It was cold and windy on the outside, and decided to seek shelter at the second level, which had a restaurant and lounge rooms overlooking the sign. Renee would order something I always liked when she spoke her native tongue. She would speak rapidly and would enunciate her words distinctly and with much aplomb. She ordered a seafood platter with french fries and a carafe of wine. Once again, I complimented her on her selection. She would smile, smooth her hair, and adjust her sitting position, anything to negate or complimenting her. It was one of her little idiosyncrasies. It was one of her idiosyncrasies. It was one of her idiosyncrasies.
I'll be glad to help you, but only minimally in the background.
That I got to admire and look forward to.
An antique
Oh, how much more?
or something that's not.
What?
Do you need more?
Huh?
He's getting it on there.
Okay. Renee asked about my experience in the hospital, and I guess I reacted the same way she would. I would shrug them off as being inconsequential and state there were many soldiers a great deal off than I. She triggered a sensitive spot and started to talk about Finky and Lape and the great remorse in losing them. Along with many more I felt responsible for. She was sympathetic of drawing me out and was both therapeutic and restorative. I felt that I would have forgotten more in depth about Finky and Lape, but I believe she sensed that it would have having a depressing effect on me and would not pursue it any further. I noticed that when I met her in a metro station, as she stood at the automatic ticket barrier waiting for me, that she was wearing a slick, tight skirt with high heels. I remarked about her appearance and how great she looked, and she seemed pleased but said nothing. My first reaction was that she wanted to emphasize the fact that she had been a novice and did not want to interfere with the short time we had together. Renee had divulged her inner conscience unless feeling comfortable with a particular person. I knew that feeling well, and it was one of the many traits we had in common. Contrary to my own opinion, Renee was going through a difficult period of adjustment, and I realized late that I entered into her thoughts as she strived for some equilibrium and stability. She was attempting to be truthful and forthcoming with me, and I felt I should do the same toward her. Even so, I felt I would not relate to her the full extent of my feelings now towards her since. I believed she would re-enter the religious order, and I did not want to influence her decision. Even so, I pleased and thrilled when she came up to me. Perhaps she was pleading for my assistance in aiding her decision, and should I recognized it. She may have been looking toward me as her arbiter who would intercede in her decision making. My own indecisiveness hindered our relationship. As for relating my true feelings towards her and not influencing her decision, it was complete avoidance and retreat to my evasive self. I could make the mature judgment decision on the person that I truly loved, instead clouded it with pseudo-jargon, deceiving both of us. In essence, I knew I had pursued Renee forthfully with due diligence, stated my true feelings toward her, and made it known that I wanted to make a life with her, come with what may. Which, huh? What's so loud? They'll be gone soon.